Hello, and welcome to the Channel of Stories. Dear listeners, before we start the story, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like and share in the comments where you are from. Thank you. Here we go.
It was the kind of rain that soaks through your coat even if you run. London had a way of making you feel like you were underwater, and that morning was no different. I ducked into the cafe mostly to escape the cold, but partly because I didn't want to be home. I hadn't written a word in days, and my anxiety had begun to chew at the edges of my mind like it always did when I was creatively dry. The bell above the door chimed behind me and I walked to the back, choosing a corner table near an old radiator. The place was half empty, filled with the soft hum of jazz music and the hiss of steamed milk. The woman behind the counter knew me well enough to nod and start making my usual soy chai, extra hot. It was the only place in the city where I felt anonymous and known all at once. I pulled out my laptop and opened a blank document, watching the cursor blink like it was judging me. That's when he walked in. He looked tired. Not in a disheveled, messy kind of way, more like someone who hadn't slept well in years. His jacket was too light for the rain. His sneakers were soaked. He scanned the cafe with a mixture of desperation and fatigue until his eyes landed on me. "There's no other open seat," he said, gesturing to the table. "Mind if I sit here? Just need to charge this." His phone dangled from his hand like an apology. I shrugged, barely looking up, and gestured to the opposite chair. He sat, sighed like he hadn't sat down in weeks, and pulled out a power bank. Then came the coffee. Black. Large. No sugar. He set it down, thanked the barista, and before he could even take a sip, his elbow knocked it clean off the table. The cup flipped, the lid popped, and dark liquid exploded across the table like a slow, caffeinated volcano. It spilled into my notebook, a brand new moleskin with only 2 pages used, and pulled dangerously close to my laptop. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," he said, eyes wide, napkins flying. "Seriously? I'll pay for that. I'm such an idiot." But I wasn't mad. I wasn't even annoyed. Because in the middle of the mess, something about him looked so devastated, so painfully human, I laughed. Just a little. A soft chuckle that caught us both off guard. His panic stilled. His eyes flicked to mine. And that was the moment. The kind that doesn't feel big until you look back and realize your entire life shifted half an inch to the left. "Guess I owe you a notebook," he said. "Guess you do," I replied, smiling more than I should have. He introduced himself as Ryan. We ended up talking for 2 hours. About books we never finished. About why the rain made us nostalgic. About how loneliness sometimes feels safer than love. That day, he walked me home under one umbrella. We shared it like a secret. We didn't touch. We didn't flirt. But something started. Something real. Something small and warm and terrifying. And all because of a spilled cup of coffee. He started calling me a little storm a few weeks in. It was a nickname born of a joke, after I had a dramatic meltdown over a sandwich shop forgetting my order, which, in my defense, they messed up for times in 2 days. "You're so quiet until you're not," Orion had said, eyes full of amusement. "It's like a thunderclap out of nowhere. Little storm." The name stuck. He even saved my contact that way. When I'd call, his screen would light up with a tiny cloud emoji and my name, and it made me feel like a secret he smiled at. Our relationship was never fireworks. It was more like the warmth of a fireplace after a long walk in the cold. Steady. Gentle. Something you didn't notice until it was gone. Ryan had this strange ability to make the mundane feel cinematic. On Tuesday nights, would grocery shop like it was an adventure. He'd push the cart, I'd sit on the handle like a kid, and would race down empty aisles. We once got kicked out of a Tesco because we reenacted a soap opera scene in the frozen food section. He played the heartbroken lover. I played his long-lost twin. The cashier clapped. He was always thinking one step ahead, not in a strategic way, but in an emotionally thoughtful way. He remembered little things I mentioned in passing. Once I told him I missed a book I lost in college, a beat-up copy of a Norwegian Wood. A week later, it appeared on my pillow with a note, for when the world feels loud. We didn't talk about marriage or forever. Not yet. But we made promises in soft ways. Let's get a dog one day. Let's see the northern lights. Let's try living in Denver. I heard the coffee scene's great. Every Saturday morning, he'd make breakfast, always too many eggs, toast slightly burnt, orange juice in a chipped mug he found at a flea market. He'd hum something under his breath, usually a song I didn't recognize until he added it to our shared playlist. And in the quiet of those mornings, I'd look at him and think, this is it. This is the part they don't write about in poems. The part where love is just, being chosen every morning by someone who knows all your awkward quirks and still wants your burnt toast. I remember once, lying on the couch with my feet in his lap, asking, do you think we'll always feel this close? He didn't hesitate. Not always. But I'll always come back. We'll fall in and out and in again. Like the tide? Exactly. Love's not a straight line. It's a coastline. Erosion, rebuild, repeat. I thought that was the most romantic thing I'd ever heard. I still do. Because that was the rhythm of us. And I wasn't afraid of storms, not when I was his. There wasn't a single moment I could point to and say, that's when I lost him. It happened in fractions. In pauses. In the in-between spaces of ordinary life. At first, it was just small things, forgetting to kiss me goodbye in the morning, skipping dinner plans with vague excuses. Work's insane, he'd say. Just exhausted. And I believed him. Of course I did. We'd built something solid. Trustworthy. But the energy changed. He started checking his phone more often, even when we were talking. He stopped asking me how my day was, not out of malice, but as if his brain was too full to hold space for mine. One night, we watched a movie we used to love. A comfort watch. I laughed at a part we always laughed at, and he didn't. He didn't even look at me. That night, I curled up in bed beside him and felt a distance bigger than the mattress between us. I tried to tell myself it was just a phase. People get tired. Relationships ebb and flow. But some part of me knew. I started noticing the absence more than the presence. His texts grew shorter. His eyes wandered. He stopped playing music in the mornings, stopped leaving post-it notes on the bathroom mirror. He still came home, still slept beside me, still used the toothbrush I bought him, but something essential was gone. I asked, gently, are we okay? He kissed my forehead, too quickly, and said, of course. Just work stuff. But I knew. Because love doesn't disappear in one day. It fades, like fog, until you don't realize how lost you are in it. I tried everything. I planned a weekend getaway. He cancelled last minute. I cooked his favorite meal. He picked at it distractedly. I even asked, point blank, are you still happy? He looked at me for a long time and said, I don't know. That was the beginning of the end, even if neither of us admitted it. There's a particular kind of grief in watching someone you love become a stranger while they're still holding your hand. And that's what Ryan became, a stranger with my memories, sleeping in our bed. But I kept hoping. Kept lighting candles. Kept waiting for the version of him who spilled coffee and made playlists to return. I didn't realize that sometimes, love doesn't leave. Sometimes, it just hides where you can't reach it anymore. I remember the day he left down to the scent of the room, lavender detergent and rain through a cracked window. Thursday. I had come home late from work. The flat was unusually quiet. His shoes were gone from the rack. At first, I thought nothing of it. Maybe he was out for groceries. Maybe he needed air. But then I saw the toothbrush missing. And the drawer. The drawer he kept his socks and old concert tees in, empty. Just empty. There was no note. No missed call. No explanation. I stood in the center of our living room like someone had punched the air out of me. My stomach dropped in that slow, inevitable way you feel before a crash. I tried calling. Straight to voicemail. I texted, "E, where are you? E. Are you okay? E. Please call me." Nothing. I called his mom. She hesitated. "He's fine," as she said, voice clipped. "What? What do you mean fine? Where is he? He just doesn't want to talk. He needs space." I froze. What does that mean? "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I really am. But he asked me not to get involved." Click. That night, I tore the apartment apart. Not angrily, frantically. Like I could find him hiding somewhere between the couch cushions or inside the laundry bin. But he wasn't there. Only the echo of his absence. The silence was deafening. Not angry silence, hollow silence. As if every wall was whispering, "It is gone." I didn't cry. Not at first. My body was too shocked. I lay on the floor for hours, staring at the ceiling, whispering, This can't be happening." And yet, it was. He'd erased himself with surgical precision. His Spotify account was gone from our family plan. His contact photo on my phone turned into a grey circle. Our shared calendar? Blank. No arguments. No screaming. Just erasure. Friends reached out. What happened? I don't know. And I didn't. I didn't know how a person could build a life with you, one playlist, one inside joke, one late-night cuddle at a time, and then vanish like a ghost. I didn't know how someone who once memorized my favorite cereal brand could forget my face overnight. I didn't know how to grieve someone who wasn't dead. There were no flowers. No funeral. No finality. Just me. And a toothbrush-shaped hole in my bathroom shelf. The first week after he vanished, I kept the bedroom exactly the same. His flannel shirt still hung on the closet door. His half-used deodorant sat on the sink. I didn't touch a thing. I was scared that changing it would make it real. As if his absence hadn't sunk in yet, hadn't rooted itself into the marrow of my days. But the silence got louder. Mornings became rituals of pretending. I'd make 2 cups of coffee. Leave the light on in the hallway. Sleep with my back turned like he might slip into bed behind me. I started talking to him out loud. "Hope work's going okay. I bought those crackers you like. Remember that time in Brighton?" And still, nothing. My body began grieving before my mind would let me. I lost weight. Cried at traffic lights. Slept in my clothes. Friends tried to help, inviting me out, checking in, but I couldn't explain the ache. Because how do you explain that you're mourning a person who still exists? I saw him everywhere. In crowds. On trains. In songs. Every tall man with a hoodie and a distracted look made my heart sprint and stumble. I even started writing letters I'd never send. I kept them in a showbox under the bed. They weren't poetic, just desperate. Why did you leave? Did you stop loving me? Did I imagine everything? I dated, eventually. I even let someone hold my hand in a theater once. But it felt like cheating on a ghost. They say time heals, but that's not always true. Time just teaches you how to live around the wound. Like a tree growing around a fence post. I deleted his playlists. Burned old photos. But I couldn't delete his number. Some nights, I'd stare at it, thumb hovering above the screen, wondering if a message would still go through. Are you alive? I wanted to write. Do you miss me? Do you even think about the way you left? But I never pressed send. Because I already knew the answer. Or maybe, I was too afraid to find out. It had been 9 months. By then, I'd stopped waiting for closure. Stopped expecting to hear his voice in the hum of passing cars or in the opening chords of old songs. I told myself I was better. Not healed, just functioning. Until the email. Subject line, no goodbye. The sender was anonymous, the address a scrambled string of letters and numbers, like something made in a rush. But the words inside? I wasn't brave enough. I'm sorry. That was all. No greeting. No name. Just that. I stared at the screen for a full hour. My hands shook. My breath came shallow. It was like someone had knocked the air out of the room. I read it again. And again. I knew it was him. Only Ryan would write something like that. Simple, devastating, true. I hit reply without thinking. I poured myself into the message. I told him everything I couldn't say to his face. That I wasn't angry, just confused. That I would have understood if he'd been honest. That the silence had hurt more than any words could have. I wrote paragraphs. Pages. I told him I missed him. That I didn't hate him. That part of me still checked the door some nights. And then I pressed send. It bounced. Undeliverable. I tried again. Same result. The address was gone. He'd closed the door the same way he opened it, with no warning, no explanation. Just a glimpse of something real before yanking it back into shadow. I sat on the kitchen floor and cried like I hadn't in months. Not because I wanted him back. But because even his apology disappeared before I could hold it. I printed the email. Folded it into my journal. I didn't frame it or keep it near my bed. I didn't romanticize it. It wasn't closure. It was a ghost knocking on the window once, just to prove he'd been real. People think silence is neutral. It's not. Silence can scream. And his did. A year after the email, I took a solo trip through Europe. It wasn't some eat, pray, love fantasy, more like running with the hope that maybe, somewhere along the tracks, I'd forget how much weight my heart still carried. Vienna was a last-minute stop. I was supposed to go straight to Amsterdam, but I woke up on a train and impulsively decided to stay a few nights. The city was quiet in February. Cold, cobbled streets, fog like silk over the river. On my second afternoon, I wandered into a gallery tucked between a pharmacy and a bookstore. It was small, almost hidden. No big signs. Just a dusty bell above the door and a placard that read, "Echoes of the Past." Inside, it smelled like varnish and winter. I walked through slowly, half bored, half lost in thought, until I saw him. In a painting. Not exactly him, but close enough that I stopped breathing. The portrait was old, 19th century, oil on canvas, the colors faded to a soft sepia. But the man? The face? It was Ryan. Same jaw. Same crooked half-smile. Same look in his eyes that made you feel like he was always thinking of something just out of reach. The name on the plaque read, E. Adrian Lather. Poet. Vanished, 1903. I laughed. Out loud. The sound startled a woman nearby. She smiled and said, "A strange, isn't it?" The poet who disappeared without a trace. I couldn't stop staring. Something in my chest shifted. Memory? Instinct? Madness? I remembered a candlelit room. A journal with red ink. A voice, his voice, reciting a line of poetry I'd never heard but somehow already knew. It made no sense. And yet it made perfect sense. I touched the glass. For a moment, I felt like time folded. Like I wasn't standing in Vienna in the present, but somewhere between moments. Between lives. Maybe it was grief. Or hope. Or both. But I left the gallery convinced of one thing. We'd met before. Not just once. Not just in London. But again and again. Like constellations shifting and repeating. Like tides and gravity and fate. What if I'd known him in another life? What if some part of him had always been leaving? And what if some part of me had always been waiting? It was a Wednesday when he knocked. I remember because I had just come home from therapy, the kind where you talk around things instead of through them. I was tired, emotionally and physically, and just wanted tea and silence. And then, 3 soft knocks at the door. I opened it, expecting a package. Maybe a neighbor. But it was him. Or someone who looked exactly like him. He wore a charcoal coat, a scarf like the one I'd once knit for Ryan, and he held a weathered envelope in both hands like it might dissolve if he gripped it too tightly. I didn't speak. I couldn't. We stood there in the soft dusk, shadows falling across his face. He looked older, or maybe not. Maybe it was just the weight behind his eyes. Without a word, he handed me the envelope. Then he smiled. The same crooked smile that had undone me once. And kissed my forehead, gently, reverently, like I was a cathedral and he was apologizing for ever leaving. Then he turned and walked away. I didn't chase him. I didn't even close the door for minutes after. Inside the envelope was a photograph. Black and white. Old. Faded. But it was us. Dressed in clothes I'd never worn but felt like I remembered. Smiling, seated on a park bench. He had a journal in his hand. I was holding a lily. On the back, a note in familiar handwriting. I found the way back. Only for a moment. That night, I lit a candle and placed the photo on my windowsill. I didn't cry. I didn't question it. Somehow, I knew that was all the time we were allowed. Just long enough for him to say what he never could before. Not in words. but in presence. A whisper from another life. A promise kept across time. After that day, the knock, the kiss, the photograph, I started writing again. Not to publish. Not even to share. Just for me. I filled a new journal cover to cover. At first, it was letters to him. Things I'd never said. Questions I knew wouldn't be answered. Were you scared? Was it hard to leave? Did you ever think of me when the world was quiet? Then it turned into memories. Moments from this life and others. Half dreams of candlelight and street lamps. Of music drifting through open windows. Of hands brushing, then pulling back. I'd write and cry. Or laugh. Or sit still for hours, the pen cooling between my fingers, heart aching in a way that felt almost holy. I started walking again. Long stretches through the park, through alleys, through the parts of the city where no one knew my name. Once, I passed a busker playing a violin, and I swear he played our song, the one Ryan put on the playlist called If for Rainy Days and Kisses. I dropped a coin in his case and walked away quickly, afraid I'd shatter into pieces on the cobblestone. Sometimes, at night, I dream of a train. He's always on it. Always standing at the back, watching me from the platform. And I'm always just a second too late. But other nights, he sits beside me. Reading. Silent. Familiar. We don't speak in those dreams. We don't need to. And when I wake, there's a strange peace. Not because I have answers, but because I've stopped needing them. Grief has softened into something quieter now. A bruise instead of a break. Love, I've learned, doesn't always ask to stay. Sometimes it visits just long enough to change your shape. To rearrange the furniture inside your soul. And that's okay. Because I'd rather have known him briefly than not at all. He didn't die. And maybe that's what made it harder. Because when someone dies, there are rituals. Funerals. Eulogies. People bring casseroles and tissues and say things like he is in a better place even if they don't believe it. You grieve. You mourn. You move forward, however slowly. But when someone you love disappears, you're stuck. Not in grief. Not in peace. But in purgatory. I've been there for years now, somewhere between hope and heartbreak. Between letting go and holding on to a ghost with warm hands and a voice I still hear in my sleep. People ask sometimes, quietly, do you think you'll ever see him again? And I don't know how to answer. Because I already have. In a painting. On a doorstep. In a dream. And maybe none of it was real. Or maybe all of it was. Sometimes, I catch myself writing his name in the margins of books. Or stopping mid-sentence because a scent hits me, cedarwood and rain, and I can't breathe. I've loved since. I've been kissed. I've held hands with men who looked me in the eye and stayed. But there's a piece of me, not a big piece, just a quiet corner, that still belongs to him. The Ryan who spilled coffee and laughed like it hurt. The Ryan who kissed my forehead that last day with the weight of 1,000 unspoken apologies. And maybe he's out there now, in another city, another timeline, living a life I'll never know. Maybe he remembers me when it rains. Maybe he writes my name in the fog on windows. Or maybe he doesn't. But here's what I know. Some people aren't meant to stay. They're meant to arrive, append everything, leave you breathless, and vanish. Not to break you, but to show you something. A mirror. A lesson. A version of love that carves deep and leaves quietly. Ryan was that for me. And no, he didn't say goodbye. But maybe he didn't need to. Maybe his silence was the punctuation mark our story required. Still, if you're out there, I don't hate you. I just wish you'd stayed long enough to say goodbye. And if you ever find your way back again, in this life or the next, I'll be waiting. Just for a moment. Just to say hello.